Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel called In Touch with Cultures. My name is Adriana, I come from Poland, I'm a PhD in linguistics, a French and Polish teacher, fully embracing the fact of living a multicultural life when it comes to my day-to-day basis. And today I will not be alone because I will have this wonderful possibility to have an interview with our special guest, a friend of mine who comes from Australia and who is indeed in touch with cultures. And today I would really like to ask you all to tell me in the comment section what is your first association with the word Australia and Australian. So without further ado, let's get this party started. Hello everyone and hello Eddie.
Hello, YouTube.
Hello YouTube. I would like you, first of all, to present yourself. Tell us where do you come from, how have we met, and what you are actually doing in Poland.
Yeah, my name's Eddie. I'm 40. I'm from Australia. I have Australian citizenship, obviously, and I also have Polish citizenship. My grandfather was actually born in Poland over 100 years ago. And yeah, I came to Poland a little over 5 years ago because I already had my Polish citizenship and passport, and I was in Europe, and I'd never been to Poland, and I felt obligated to visit. And I was pleasantly surprised, actually. I'd heard about this Eastern Bloc part of Europe, that was sort of war-torn and full of communism. So I wasn't really expecting much, but I went to Krakow initially, and yeah, it's such a beautiful, beautiful place, and the people here are so friendly. The food is amazing. Yeah, Poland is really a great place to visit. And I met Adriana a few years ago when I wanted to learn the Polish language, and she teaches Polish, so that's how we actually met and became friends.
Yes, and we became friends, and we are friends till now. And can you confess how many citizenships and resident cards do you actually have? Because it is unbelievable.
Well, I can confess, I suppose. But yeah, yeah, I have two citizenships, as I mentioned, Australian, and I got my Polish one about 7 years ago. And I'm also, I live in Bulgaria, so I have residency there as well. So two and a half, I suppose.
Two and a half, pretty good. And lately you told me a tremendously amazing story about your family origins, about your family members, and how you went to Ukraine. And I guess that it is really worth sharing with our viewers. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, my grandfather was born in Poland in 1918, actually. But the part of Poland where he was born in, it was only Poland between World War One and World War Two. Before World War One and after World War Two is actually part of Ukraine. So although I do have Polish citizenship because of where my grandfather was born, it turns out that I'm probably more Ukrainian actually than Polish. But my grandfather was in the Polish army in World War II, and he was a prisoner of war with the Germans for 4 years. After World War II, he was living in Germany in a camp there for a couple of years, I think. And he met my German grandmother. They were going to emigrate to the United States to escape the post-war Europe, but all their documents got stolen, so they had to get new documents made up, and then they ended up traveling to Australia and migrating there. My grandfather died about 30 years ago. I think he was about 72, so he lived a pretty good life considering. And unfortunately, he never actually tried to contact his family back in Rivne, where he was actually born, because he was still so afraid, even in 1990, that if he tried to contact his family, that the KGB would find him in Australia and torture him and kill him, or they would find his family there if they survived in Rivne in Ukraine and kill them. So he was still afraid even up until that point. So unfortunately, he never tried to contact them. And our family had no idea if they survived. We thought maybe they were sent to Siberia in the gulags, or maybe they ended up in Poland, or we really had no idea. So earlier this year, I decided to go to Rivne to have a look in the archives because I did actually ask a couple of people from Ukraine to call, the archives and see if they could find out any information. But they said that you really need to go there. So yeah, I mean that part of Ukraine, I didn't know if anybody spoke English or really what I was going to find there. So it was definitely a bit of a surprise adventure. So yeah, I jumped on a plane, went to Kiev, then got a 5-hour bus ride to Rivne. and it was very, very cold at the time. They hadn't had that much snow in many, many years. So it was like 3-4 feet of snow. It was minus 20. I spent a few days in Rivne town centre, and then I ventured a little bit further out where my grandfather was actually baptized and born, so about 14 kilometers outside of Rivne. I got a taxi to actually take me to the old church where he was baptized. And the church was built in around 1700, but it was semi-destroyed in 1939 during the war, and it hasn't been recovered. But beautiful, beautiful old stone church that much of the church is still standing. So it was quite beautiful to actually go there, knowing that my grandfather was baptized there, a little over 100 years before.
Of course.
And then I got the taxi to take me to the small town a few kilometres away from there where my grandfather was actually born. It was like a farming village. There's no shops or anything there. So again, wasn't really expecting to find much. I just wanted to, have a look to see where my grandfather was born. And the taxi driver didn't speak any English, so we were communicating on Google Translate. But he knew I was trying to find my grandfather and family, so he was sort of, all of a sudden on board, which was quite fun, quite nice of him as well. And in the small town where my grandfather was born, we saw a small cemetery. So we decided to go into the cemetery and see if we could see any names, any family names on any of the gravestones. But yeah, as I mentioned, there was a few feet of snow, so it was very difficult to walk around in there. Plus, most of the language wasn't in English; it was in Russian too, so I couldn't even understand it.
Of course, this is normal. Yes, but you dealt with that, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we decided to leave. I was just going to go back to the hotel and probably just leave Ukraine. And then when we walked out of the cemetery, the taxi driver noticed this woman who got off a bus, and he ran over to her and Pani, do you know this family name, like my family's name? And they were talking for a couple of minutes, and then he said, get in. So, all three of us got in the taxi and we drove a couple of 100 meters down the road. And the woman went and knocked on this door at a house. And a few minutes later, she waves, come in. And at the door, there was a little old frail lady who was 91 years old, like who had a crutch under her arm. And she looked in pain, just standing there. But just absolutely amazing. It actually turned out to be my grandfather's sister-in-law, who was still alive at age 91. So through that I ended up meeting three of my mum's first cousins. Absolutely surreal, and they had no idea that any of us even existed. Because they actually received a letter at the end of World War II saying that my grandfather had died, and he was the oldest of 5 siblings. So, they had no idea that he went to Australia, had 4 children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So for them, it was mind-blowing. Obviously for us, it was as well, because we really didn't know that, if any of them survived. But they all survived. His whole family survived there. They all had children and grandchildren, and didn't leave the area. They weren't sent to Siberia or anything horrible happened to them. So it was absolutely surreal. And obviously I called my family in Australia and told them, and they were happy and in tears, and now they're in contact as well with our family in Ukraine. So.
So you gained the new family members.
Gained new family, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, and you can still be in contact with them.
Absolutely.
And it is absolutely unusual. Okay, and my next question is, how would you define Australian man or woman, and is it easy to recognize them in a crowded place full of different people? Is it easy for you to recognize them among the others? And if yes, then what are those special traits of them, if you can tell?
Yeah, that's a little bit difficult. I mean, the average Aussie man and woman, I would say they're pretty laid back. They're quite often larrikins, like they like to joke around a lot and laugh a lot. We have a sort of dry sense of humour, so
I confirm.
She gets confused sometimes with my humour. It can be a little bit confusing for people that aren't from Australia. We also have a little bit of our own sort of dialect, I suppose, of English. So, for example, many words that we have, we will shorten it and put an O on the end. So in Australia, we call a gas station or petrol station, we call it a service station. But the way we would say servo. So instead of service station, it's just servo. Or if you're having a cigarette break or a smoke break, we would say you're going for a smoko. So, even that sort of those sort of changes in language for somebody that's not from there can be very, very confusing. If I was sitting here with another Australian person and we were just talking in our normal Australian way in our accent and stringing words together, like
Yes.
Adriano or yourself probably, wouldn't be able to understand
Yes,
half of it.
Sometimes I have a little bit of difficulties, but not many, because you are adapting. Really, you are adapting to our like standard English. Yes, but it can be different. Maybe Australian women, they are different from Polish women. How would you describe them? Maybe physically, they look similar.
Polish women definitely have their own sort of look, I think. If I'm in another country, and I could probably pick out a Polish woman a lot of the time. But yeah, Australia is so multicultural. We have people from all different backgrounds, so it's very difficult to physically, I think, pick out like a man or a woman from Australia.
That's true.
Unless maybe they were wearing, thongs, not thongs like in the US thongs, but like flip-flops. But I haven't actually been to London or England, but I've heard that it's very easy to spot an Australian there because they always have sunglasses on their forehead. Because in Australia it's so sunny, so you always take sunglasses with you. But in obviously England, there's no sun at all, so it's a habit for us to have them with us. But obviously you can't wear them on your eyes, so they sit on your head.
You're used to European weather, yes. So for you it's no longer a problem. And I would like to ask you what you find the most annoying in Poland.
The most annoying? I don't know if I'd say annoying, but probably the worst parts of Poland would be like 9 months of the year. Not that I'm here 9 months of the year, but it's quite cold. And in winter it's very, very cold. Like today is -8 degrees with a real feel of -20. But worse than that is actually the darkness. This time of year it gets light at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 3:30 in the afternoon it's dark again. So if you do spend a whole winter here, it can be very, very depressing. That's probably the worst of parts.
Yes. I have to admit that it is true. Even for Polish people, it is difficult. Even though I'm living here all of my life, it is still difficult. And what do you maybe like the most in our country? Maybe the food or people or.
The food for sure. The Polish dumplings, the pierogies are absolutely delicious. It's easy to put on an extra few kilos if you keep them regularly in your diet. The vodka here is amazing. The beer, the ciders, the women, the people, and there's so much history and culture. Poland was at the epicenter of 2 world wars basically, and so there is that side of history. But Poland is such an old country. Especially compared to Australia. Australia is just over 200 years old. So, I can walk around here and see buildings that are 600-700 years old. In Australia, that's just not possible. So, for me, it's absolutely, it's beautiful to see that and experience it.
Yes, and for us, it is beautiful to host you here. And now, maybe name 2 difficult words in Polish. Maybe you can tell the viewers about that.
Yeah, Poland definitely it's apparently one of the hardest languages to learn. And although the words look like English letters, most of them sound very different. And there are actually a couple of letters in Poland that the sound that you make is unique to Polish language only. I think the hardest word I learned is tak, which means yes.
That's a very difficult one. No, come on. Go on.
Okay, there's a district not far from Gdańsk where we're recording this video at the moment, and there's 8 letters in it, and there's only 1 vowel. And it's if you try to, maybe you can put it up on the screen.
Yes.
So maybe like you could try and pronounce it now. Okay, but the way to pronounce it, I think, is Wrzeszcz.
Yes, and it is perfect pronunciation. Wrzeszcz. Yes, and we have also another word which is really common today when we have to wear masks. And this is the word.
So try and pronounce that.
Dezynfekuj. Dezynfekuj, yes. In fact, in Polish we have a lot of words borrowed from English, but we are adding our Polish endings like informacja, stacja, information, station. So it is not that hard, but of course our grammar, I guess, it is the worst. And now my last question for today's video is can you name maybe two, maybe three, maybe one, your favorite restaurants in Gdańsk, in Sopot, maybe in Gdynia? Yes.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think, I mean, the number one restaurant that comes to mind, especially being in Poland, is a restaurant called Mandu. Mandu actually is Korean for dumpling, so they only sell dumplings there, mostly Polish ones, but there's many different flavors. So, you know, the fillings can be, you know, chicken or pork or potato, or, you know, sometimes the spinach ones. They have dessert ones as well. They also do different dumplings from around the world, so they have Korean ones and Chinese ones. And then they do these baked, fluffy ones too. They're like big, it's almost like an empanada, but they change the menu often, and it's really, you know, it's really great service, really nice to be there, and the food is just absolutely amazing. And, you know, being in Poland, I would have to say that one, you know, for Polish food. There's another great restaurant called Mito Sushi. They do really amazing sushi. My brother's a chef. He was visiting here a few years ago, and we were here at the same time. And yeah, I took him there, and he you know, he wanted to go and have a look at the kitchen, so he was expecting to see a handful of Japanese chefs in there, but he was pleasantly surprised when there was just Polish people in there, because yeah, the sushi was that good.
Yes, we are trying really hard, and we love cuisine from all over the world, and we are always capable to learn new things, new flavors, etc. Okay, and it was all for today's video, and I hope you liked it. And Eddy, say bye bye to the camera.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you so much. Bye.